It's the worst of the CBC for October 30th, 2020, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. Okay, going on from, I guess, yesterday. Good thing about the CBC News, what was their top story? Their top story was the correct top story. It was the terrorist attacks in France. Now, the top story in the CBC, the National, how long do you think they covered the terrorist attacks in France for? If you thought less than 2.5 minutes, you'd be correct. So the lead story gets less than 2.5 minutes to talk about everything about France. You know, think of all the other stuff they're dealing with, but the French things, right? The initial Charlie Hebdo attacks, the subsequent Charlie Hebdo attacks, the beheading of a teacher, Macron taking a shot at Islamism, the 3 separate terrorist attacks that happened that day, the protests in Pakistan and Turkey against France, the radical Islamists against France who are, you know, protesting France and not the beheadings. We're having one in Toronto tomorrow. I think I'm going to go there and film it. Why not? So that took all less than 2.5 minutes. Of course, none of the problems are named. Now, they did show clips of interviews of different French politicians saying radical Islamic terrorism, but they themselves, oh, no, we will not name the problem. And I pointed this out on other CBC episodes before. This is one of the things that drives me so insane. But when they remember the massacre of the Polytechnic Institute. So this is in Canada. This was a misogynist shooting in a Quebec college, okay? They spent the whole day saying, you know what, we need to name the problem. This is misogyny. This is misogyny. We need to talk about the motives. We need to talk about the underlying thing. This isn't just a gun thing. There was an ideology behind the Polytechnic massacre decades ago, and we still have to talk about that ideology today. Even though there haven't been many repeat attacks on this, we still need to talk about this ideology. Fine. And I said, fine. We do need to talk about ideologies behind different horrific acts, especially if they keep repeating. But do we talk about the ideology behind someone beheading someone for drawing a picture of Muhammad? And of course the CBC does the thing where they call him the Prophet Muhammad, because, you know, every time you watch the news and they mention Jesus, they don't say Jesus, they say Jesus, Son of God, Savior of man. That's what they say on the news. We're talking, yes, Catholic priest who worships Jesus, Son of God and Savior of man. No, always the Prophet Muhammad, but always just Jesus. So always make sure to give your respect to the Prophet Muhammad, you know, and his wives, whether they be married at 6 years old or 50 years old. You know, massive respect to all of them, right? There's nothing wrong with marrying a 6-year-old girl and then having sex with her when she is 9, because saying so would be some sort of phobic. Okay, so that was the worst. I mean, just 2.5 minutes, a blurb, nothing of value being said. And then sort of saying, yes, and there's widespread anger towards Macron in the Islamic world. Explain that. Explain what the anger is about, right? You're legitimizing it by saying, oh, and there's also counter-protests. Oh, there must be 2 sides to this story. There is 2 sides to this story, actually. Those who see someone get decapitated for trying to teach students about freedom of speech and going, oh my God, that's horrific. And the other people who say that and say, no one's allowed to make fun of Islam. If they do, they're the ones that have the problem and they will die. Those are the 2 sides. And we have some of those people, option number B, they'll be protesting in front of the French consulate tomorrow in Toronto. I think I'm going to go down there. I'll take out my phone. I'll stream it so you can watch it. We'll see what's up. Who knows? Against France. The other worst story, I'm just giving 2 worst stories in the CBC. What should they have covered? Of course they should have covered this better. But the other worst thing is, Rosemary Barton. So they brought Rosemary Barton on to do her at-issue thing with her 3 stooges, Chantal Hebert, that dude from Quebec, Annalena Raj, the, you know, far lefty, and then Andrew Coyne, the fake conservative. And Andrew Coyne is actually the worst today. So if you don't know Andrew Coyne's shtick, Andrew Coyne is like to be your sort of, I hate to say that, I'm not going to say that, your fake conservative. His job is, you know, his job is to sell out the conservative movement again. He's one of those people, you know, phony rhetorics. And he's usually not that bad. He like plays centrist, right? He's a centrist that they sometimes play as conservative, and he was just going hard on the Trump Derangement Syndrome. And I was saying, like, what Andrew Coyne's job is he's supposed to, like, stand up to liberal corruption. So about 3.5 weeks after every major scandal, like 3.5 weeks after the SNC-Lavalin thing happens, like, not at the start of the SNC-Lavalin. Like, Andrew Coyne won't stand at the forefront and fight corruption. But once it's out of the public mind, Andrew Coyne will come back, and his job is to write an op-ed that's about like 2,000 words, and 50% of those words have like 4 or more syllables to pretend that he's this like, oh, this is the intellectual conservative, right? He's better than the rest of us. He is so smart and wordy and verbose, and then his job is to sort of, apply his, or sort of excuse his intelligence as sometimes he leans left. And that's what the general public is like, okay, sometimes he's left-wing, and that's why he's able to say these fancy words that, and write these articles that essentially could be written in half the time in a much more clear and concise manner, but it's his job to do it. So he was up there talking about, oh, Donald Trump, if he gets back in, this means for Canada, Donald Trump will destroy the institutions that he's already been trying to erode, and, he'll probably be arrested. Then started going the Russia collusion thing, like, oh, he'll be arrested, and it's only the fact that he's the president is keeping him out of his legal troubles. No, it's only the fact that he didn't commit any of these crimes in real life. The only thing that keeps Donald Trump out of prison is something called the law. Now, in America, you actually cannot prosecute people who commit crimes in your imagination. This is complicated. People, in order to be prosecuted under American law, actually have to commit crimes in the real world. The collective imagination of the mainstream media is actually a fictional place. I know it seems real to Andrew Coyne and friends, but it's actually not real. And this is probably one of the biggest legal questions of our time. And I've done a lot of studies, so I have seen it. Now, I'm not sure how this goes in Canada, because I seem to be on trial for committing crimes in some people's imagination. But as far as I'm concerned, in the United States of America, you actually cannot be convicted for a crime if it happens inside the imagination of Andrew Coyne and CNN hosts. It actually has to happen in the real world. There has to be evidence of that. Then you can go to jail. Considering none of that happened, I don't know. So I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, the Rosemary Barton Scale, because I have to see Rosemary Barton's face. I have to listen to, oh yes, so profound, Mr. Coyne. Donald Trump's going to jail? Yeah, so 10 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barton Scale. Shoot me.